And we'll continue the conversation, but we will say thank you to Ashik for joining us, and so that you can head off to your next obligation.
Thank you again, Ashik. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Bye-bye.
Ashik. Bye. So to the audience, we will continue our conversation about investment in Bangladesh, the investment summit that just concluded a few days ago. And I'm going to hand it over to Kawsar again to invite additional commentators and to have a wider discussion. And we will be going through the questions you submitted, either on the form or via chat or in the different platforms. People are posing questions. So we will try to get through and discuss with other experts, not having Ashik here any longer. But Kawsar, feel free to take it away and moderate the conversation now.
Thank you, Farhana. And like Ashik, as he explained, if there are any case-specific investments anybody is interested in, then they can also reach out to us Alliance members, and maybe we can, if it's something very important, then we could obviously try to take it up to Ashik. And, it could be a win-win for Bangladesh, right? So I would like to introduce Mainul. If Mainul would come into the podcast. And then, Mainul, if you have anybody willing to have questions, then you can add, a couple of our friends here, and then we can start a lively conversation today. Thank you.
Mainul,
thanks, Kawsar. Yes, this was a great discussion. And I think we have tremendous interest in the social media chat box and a lot of questions coming in. I think I'm going to invite Fahim Masrur from BD Jobs shortly. He's going to join in a few minutes.
Okay.
Munaf, are you around? You want to chime in?
I think Munaf could also, because he's also quite heavily involved in this. Munaf, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here. Okay. Just having trouble with the camera, but I'm keeping it like this. You can see my.
That's nice. So, is there anybody else who would like to join? Is our friends, US friends?
Fahim is coming shortly, and he's probably the person who's involved most closely, because he started BD Jobs, which is wildly popular. He's very much in tune with the investment climate, economic issues in Bangladesh. And so those of you who are still with us, so you heard Ashik talk about the summit, but there are a lot of issues that, we can continue to discuss. So for instance, when we think about what he said in terms of inviting investors, whether they're foreign, non-resident Bangladeshis, or some sort of combination of joint ownership, or even they're domestic. So getting through the red tape is a big issue, but then also in terms of making sure that things then, if they're produced in Bangladesh, then they go to where they need to go. So both structural reforms, connectivity, digital, but then also other sectors like healthcare, renewable energy, defense, and so on. We have Fahim here. So, Kawsar, do you have any questions for Fahim? Or Fahim, would you like to say a few words?
Sure.
Fahim, are you? Yes. Hi.
Am I audible?
Okay. Yes, you're audible. We can hear you.
So, any question, Kawsar?
No, were you able to listen to Ashik's interview today?
Yes, I actually listened almost 70% of his speech. Nice. Like, it was quite impressive as usual. So I just want to kind of add that I think, I have been kind of also following some discussion and also to some extent some controversy as well on the amount of investment that have been committed or whatever. But I think I originally had a very reasonable expectation from this particular event. One of the reasons is that, of course, we all know that we are actually having an interim government, and any kind of foreign investor would probably want to have a much more longer term. And of course, they would try to kind of see what is going around, and they probably would wait till they actually make the final decision on with regard to investment. But I think this particular summit is more important for another reason, not because of how much investment we have actually attracted. It is much more about kind of putting us in the light of whatever is actually going around. We know that for last 6 and 7 months, and we from this kind of platform have been kind of working relentlessly on that against the misinformation. And one of the major misinformation narrative is that Bangladesh is almost kind of burning, and not only burning, all the business and other things are actually going down. Our export have been stopped and whatever. But in reality, we all know that economy is going as usual. Like our export for last like 8 months have been quite good. Like it actually grew almost even RMG export grew almost over 10% in last 8 months after the time of even like July or August revolution. So I think the actual scenario is quite different somehow because of this whole industrial scale misinformation and disinformation. A lot of the people outside the country, a lot of people have actually unfortunately believed on those things. So I think this actually has have given us an opportunity to kind of set the context right. So it says that like the big kind of garments buyers Zara and others have actually attended. A lot of the kind of economic activities are taking place. So I think it's more important for us to say these things to a kind of wider audience, not necessarily attracting investment right away. So to set things in the right context, that probably is the biggest objective, and I think that that was the biggest success that this summit could actually achieve.
You're correct. My takeaway, I had basically one important takeaway. My takeaway was that because I have also been, I think I've been quite involved with EPB for, increasing the export basket of Bangladesh, but we're not being able to make headways. So at least one good thing that happened from this is that outside investors were able to see Bangladesh and think of other, other projects other than just garments and textile. So that was an important takeaway, especially when Ashik said, how can we make defense related weapons, small things like bullets, these things. So these will give people outside investors ideas that, okay, Bangladesh, you don't need to just go to make garments, you can make other things, right? So I thought that was very important. But the only problem that I'm seeing is what I've been discussing is that uh, because we have been doing garments since the early 80s, so there was enough time for Bangladesh to expand its industries and come to a certain level of economies of scale. And me from the Furniture Export Association, we've been saying, look, give us partial duty-free access so we can bring in raw material and start different industries like the furniture industry, right? So in this case, I had a friend call me. He does signage business. So he's saying, look, I have this business in China, but I made the investment in Bangladesh. But because I'm not being able to import the raw material and I'm having to pay the duty, I'm not being able to make headways. So can you talk to them and see, if they can give me this duty-free access? But I have my factory outside the export zone. But if they give me for a limited time, at least I can start the business. And in light of what is going on with the China tariff, this is the perfect time for us to exploit that. But I hope that the government will be able to have open ears and listen to some of these investors, because they are ready to transfer the multi-million-dollar factories to Bangladesh and bring their managers to train our people. So that'll be like multi-million-dollar businesses overnight. So I hope that we will be able to go up to them and ask them for some kind of leniency. What do you think about that, Naim?
No, absolutely. I think like what I like most about kind of Ashik's kind of candidness about like he actually acknowledges that there are a lot of kind of difficulties in bureaucracy and getting those things, the speed and all those things. And he actually, in the interview with you, he actually mentioned about the number of licenses and all other things. Now, I think one of the kind of approach that BIDA has taken, and it is very obvious that he would actually take that from his part that to so that it is kind of one stop service that where all the kind of licenses could be actually given at one place. But I would probably also argue that in fact we have been actually always challenging that what is the need of so many licenses in the first place. So
Exactly.
why would you need kind of hundreds of license because it is not that in Vietnam and other countries you don't need so many licenses. So I think and I know that Ashik has been very active on this thing, but like it doesn't only depend on kind of BIDA, it also depends on a lot of other kind of agencies including kind of NBR, environmental ministry and land ministry and all those things. So I think now it is the time. We have been talking about reform and all other things. Unfortunately, one of our criticism to the for the IG is that they have taken a lot of reform initiative in a lot of other things, but they have not taken that many regulatory reforms in the business sector. So we
You are
need
correct. You're 100%
serious
correct. Yes.
business sector reforms, and I'm pretty sure Ashik knows about the challenges, and I know from my own kind of network he has been fighting within the bureaucracy. But I think a lot of the other ministries and other kind of advisors also, they also need to get engaged the way our BIDA chairman is actually trying to address these issues.
A lot of problem that I have faced so far from working with EPB is that I feel that it is NBR that is causing a lot of these issues. That they could have liberalized the import rules, right? All the legal framework is done. It's just NBR is not giving the permission for us to use this clause to bring in partial, with duty-free access, giving a bond. I don't know
Yes.
why that's not happening.
And you see, say
Yeah.
for example, like last couple of weeks, we had kind of even after Eid, all our kind of ministers and other kind of, including the chief advisors, they had emergency meeting after kind of Trump gave that kind of tariff, and they said that well, we will liberalize lot of things, will make things non-tariff barriers and all other things. Now, my point is, if why would it need Trump or US to kind of threat us on that? It's for our own business. So we should actually do it proactively, preemptively. So I think like the time has come that we actually ask ourselves because you see the problem is normally bureaucrats don't want to give away their authority. So they feel that
Exactly.
the more license the system has, they have more control. So they don't easily want to give away their kind of control on things. So, but I think that's why I think people like Dr. Yunus and other kind of like advisors in our cabinet, they should take that call actually. So they must actually talk to the business community, investors, and ask which are the things that they think that it can, because at the end of the day, it is not for the betterment of the country or even state. It is mainly because the bureaucrats want to have more control on that thing. So it is not
Right.
accusing anyone.
So, can I just add, this then brings us to a very thorny issue that obviously was not a topic of conversation, with Ashik because this was a debriefing of the BIDA summit, but it brings us to reforms. What we're essentially talking about is restructuring the way we do things. And as Ashik mentioned, there's enormous amount of red tape, right? You have to go to 100 different places. So even having to streamline it into one place, that is a shift that has to be, maintained going into the future. So one of the things is that, those design level reforms in the way a government functions is so incredibly important. It's not just specific, structural changes that drop down bottom of priorities because we're focusing on specific sectors like energy or defense or business investments. We're actually getting to the heart of the matter that we need to have these structural reforms in place so that we can do business more efficiently, so that we have more connectivity, so that we have more renewable energy, right? And these are the thorny issues that a lot of the reforms that are going on that need to be implemented. And we know that the interim government has promised to hold elections very soon in a few months. Not all of these reforms will be possible, and there's a lot of resistance. As Fahim, you just mentioned, there's a lot of interest in the red tape because red tape generates forms of bribery and corruption and inefficiencies in the system. If you take away having to move a file from 100 different desks where you'd have to pay 100 different bribes to a one-stop shop, you're reducing the income, which means structurally we need to raise public sector salaries. So there's, people do not need to supplement their income like this. So there's a lot of different kinds of issues going on. But right now we're seeing that there's more interest in having rapid elections instead of seeing certain kinds of reforms put into place. So I really believe that our government, if we're going to get through the red tape, have more of the kinds of benefits that will benefit larger group of Bangladeshis and regionally competitiveness, but also in everything from healthcare sector to energy, to water, to climate change, to food, to housing, to infrastructure, transportation. All of these mean that we need to structurally reform the way we do things in the government. And this is something that needs to be an ongoing conversation well beyond, right? Every year we should be having these kinds of conversations. What needs to shift and why is it not shifting? So I think these are the kinds of
So
structural.
I want to, yeah, Farhana, I want to just add in here to what you and Fahim Bhai I think are mentioning. And to be honest, like I think this conversation that we just had with Ashik Bhai, I think this kind of does a very good job of conveying that, even though in the I think the last 1 week, I think social media or a good or like a good supporters, they're going all maybe too happy with what's happening, like thinking that all the problems are getting solved because this event is happening. But I think like hearing directly from Ashik Bhai and the team, I think they are pretty grounded. They really understand what's really happening. It's not like, and you could clearly sense that this is a person who is working and not a like a typical politician saying to make sure they can continue power or anything. They're pretty straightforward. They understand what's working and what not and what's not working. But I think this is something that everyone involved in their own capacity, especially in the business field, needs to understand that this is not one person's or two persons' job. This is not like, Professor Yunus asking Ashik Chowdhury to come in and everything will get changed. I think they're showing good steps to move forward. I think it's very important that everyone involved realizes that it needs to be taken forward, because at this point, and he kept mentioning that the next government when they come in, so I think for them they also have a end date in mind as they are progressing this. But it's really great to see that they are trying to open up things, set some benchmarks, which the next whoever comes in or whoever needs to continue, they can be held accountable. So I think these are very good conversations, and I felt that this is a very good part of this, where he was very candid about the challenges that are there, rather than talk about only what are the good things that has happened. So I found that to be very refreshing, and I think it's very important for everyone who's listening as well to take it as a like as a takeout from this entire thing. So yeah.
Great points. Thank you, Munaf. Did others want to add? I see Bappi and Mainul here.
Yeah, Bappi wanted to say something.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So just 3 points here. Casey said about how in the 1980s, we have accumulated so much experiences in the garment sector. Correct me if I'm wrong, but couldn't the experiences that Bangladeshis have diversify attire, such military-grade uniforms like bulletproof vests and other protective military wear, or healthcare or protective suits for radioactive exposure, which is highly in demand in industrialized countries with nuclear reactors. That's something that we could utilize. Second, in terms of BIDA, my cousin worked for Transparency International before he was threatened, and so he was relocated by Sheikh Hasina's government. He's relocated in Malaysia, but he gave me pointers about BIDA way before Ashik joined the government. And when I explored the website, it is so complicated because I wanted to invest in Bangladesh. I just hope that there's an outline for NRBs like me that we can invest money of how to get a business license. What are the requirements? How can we start a business account without all the bribes and red tapes and the unnecessary licenses that it's just for corrupt bureaucrats. And I wish that I hope that he is successful before the next election. Another thing that I didn't hear from Ashik, but I think this is something that I see it in front of my eyes. I have traveled the world. I've stayed in different resorts. The amount of forex reserves that comes in from tourism is insane. I mean, if Bangladesh, if Ashik or whoever's in this tourism sector is in charge of it, actually takes the initiative and upgrades the tourism sector in Bangladesh, we're talking about international level. And one of them I see like what Golden Silet Resort, and that's a beautiful resort. But let's say we have in Chittagong and other parts of Bangladesh, people from Europe, people from America, Australia, they bring in Australian dollars, US dollars, euros, pounds. This can tremendously increase. I don't know how much, but over time, you can tremendously increase the forex reserves for Bangladesh. So we don't always have to depend on remittance and any other factors to bring in, um, uh, forex reserves. So that's something that I didn't hear Ashik talk about. So I think that we could just bring that up if I know he has a lot on his plate as it is. But yeah, these are the 3 pointers that I just wanted to like bring up. Thank you for your
See,
time.
my problem, Bappi, is that if you go to Thailand, okay, or even India, there's so much. I mean, we have literally destroyed our environment. I mean, you have to realize that fact. We don't have that much, we quote unquote, we don't have that much tourism area. If you really think, size wise, so there could be a limited scope there. But my thoughts that I've been spending the last year on is that, and then I did speak in January to the, there was an EPB, open, hearing, and the Commerce Minister advisor was there. And I just told them that, look, Trump is coming in, there's going to be new taxes, so Bangladesh is going to benefit from that. And in 2016, when he came in, there was a China Trump tax, and we were the ones who could have benefited the most. Believe me, we did not capitalize on that. Vietnam did. They allowed every company. They said, okay, you want to bring in business from China? Okay, here is you can do a partial bond, bring it in. We give you like a year's time to be able to export this raw material after using it. Done. They went from a zero economy to the hero of the world, right? We
Mhm.
have an opportunity right now to do that, because there's so many people knocking on my door saying, look, if you're going to talk to Ashik, tell the government that, we are waiting. This is our second win. If you don't get it, then some other country is going to take it. We have to think, the IG, then whoever political government comes in, they have to think that every factory in Bangladesh can be used for export base. They think that every factory is going to steal. Okay, bring in raw material, gonna steal, and that's it. End of the story. They have to change their mindset and think that every factory in, even if it's a small 5-man, 2-man show, that yes, this is an exportable unit, we can make money from it. People in China think like that. People in Vietnam think like that. We have to change. Our government has to change their mindset and say that yes, we can export anything. And right now, with the 100 and something percent duty on China, there's it's open season for us. Unfortunately, we are not taking it, and that's why I'm so frustrated.
Uh, can I make a comment? I actually completely agree with Casey that I think unfortunately I have seen a lot of kind of panic among our business community after the Trump tariff. But from day one, I have been actually saying that it is a kind of like golden opportunity for us. So
Bye. I was the first one. I made a few calls. I said, "Look, what's the deal?" And then somebody sends me the 20% rule. I said, "Beautiful. We are set. We can do this.
yeah,
We can
absolutely,
do this."
And
exactly.
you know that this morning I saw another thing termed exactly exempt computer, iPhone, and chips, including China, from the
He
tax.
has to do
Which
that. He has. Otherwise, Apple is gonna go under.
Yes,
exactly, I mean, it's pretty
you see,
predictable.
we have made
Look, the
kind.
garments people, think about it. Take, I have been telling them, take American cotton, hell with Indian cotton, because this is another, we have been sabotaged there. Buy
Yes.
American cotton. I do furniture. I buy American oak wood. Okay, I buy American wood. I will reship it at 0% or 10% duty. How many people can exploit the situation, right? We have everything ready for us. We have the capacity, but we are not utilizing it.
Absolutely, and you see the one of the biggest challenge of our kind of garments industry is basically the energy issue. But now there is a kind of good side of the whole kind of like quote unquote the probable decision is that oil prices actually come down. That is going to actually help us because we can now actually buy LNG at a cheaper price and supply
Right.
to other kind of factories. So this is one thing, and one thing actually I want to mention, we in the like last week we made a kind of analysis in one of the other group. We have seen that in the last big recession,
Hmm.
I'm talking about 2007 2008, the financial crisis recession, we have
Right.
seen towards 2007 and 2008 Bangladesh garments had actually highest growth rate in
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
sometimes these decisions actually help uh, our garments industry, and because we actually supply the low end type of things, and people
Mhm.
in the West, whenever there is a kind of price increase or recession, they move to the kind of low value items. So I think these are some of the opportunities, and we need to be ready to utilize that. So we need to have a strategy first. So and if required, like get engaged, like the companies like Young One and other who have been kind of awarded. I'm very happy about that. These are the companies who are already exporting in the US. They have presence in Bangladesh. So give
Mhm.
them kind of more support so that they can actually target those markets very aggressively now.
Very
Uh,
true. Very true.
can I make a comment? So
Yeah.
everything you say is correct, but can I go back to the tourism sector?
Sure.
Being as going around the world, you don't really need natural areas for creating resorts. Okay, I mean, if someone who can actually come in and create, think creatively, you don't really need to use the Bangladesh's like beautiful nature to create that tourism industry. People from Europe, from Russia, from Korea will come to Bangladesh just for the warmth. You just need to create the environment. So it's
No, no,
there.
Papi. I'm sorry if you took it otherwise, but I'm trying to talk about a much bigger piece of the pie. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm,
That
I'm
definitely,
not trying to take away from what you said, but I've been pushing the EPB and so many different, in government levers, but it's not working. I'm trying to tell them, please consider every factory in this country as an exportable unit.
of
Okay,
course,
think if it in the micro level, if you're talking about 1 million factories or 500,000 factories, and
of course.
everybody exporting, where does it take us? We
Mhm.
only keep talking about 40 or 45 billion dollars of garments. I said, look, within 5 years you could have another 10 billion or 15 billion dollar, if you aggregate different industries, right?
Of
If you
course,
give them the scope, I mean, we could possibly, within 5 to 7 years, we could double our export earnings from 50 to 100 billion dollars, or maybe even more. That's what
yeah,
I'm getting at, right?
sure,
Of course, your tourism, I agree with that, but that's a limited, scope there, right?
of course, of course.
Right.
Now
That's all I'm trying to say.
the biggest fear I think everyone has is the next elected government, are they going to screw it up? That's the biggest fear, I
Of
think. And
course, I
if
mean that's
someone
all
who
our
wants,
fear,
who
right?
wants to invest a great sum of money in Bangladesh,
Right.
and am I, and I have full confidence with Dr. Yunus. If I, bring in thousands from
Mhm.
other people from my field to invest in Bangladesh. Now, if let's say some other corrupt or political party with like different agenda who wants to loot, I'm not gonna feel that very comfortable, bringing in so much money to Bangladesh. So I think that's everyone's fear right now, because
Very true. Very true.
they have limited time.
So, one of the ways to assuage that fear, whether foreign or domestic investor, is to streamline processes, have transparency, accountability, and to reduce that friction of corruption, right? About the leaky pipeline. So,
Yes.
the one I think this is why there should be continuity in the ideas that were generated in the summit, the work that BIDA, Ashik, and others are working very hard for, and those then, if those can be then continued irrespective of future governments, then we can continue to grow investor confidence. And if you make it easier to do business in Bangladesh, then more people will come, irrespective of whichever political party is in power, because you've shifted, reformed the bureaucracy that runs the government. You've shifted the institutions, right? The types of rules and regulations in place so that it is easier to get work done. And I think this is why it was important to have the summit, and it is why people should continue to support the kinds of removal of red tape for simplification, so that we do not lose confidence after elections with whoever comes into power. And we know that there's a difference always between a political party in power than whether it's a caretaker or interim government, which is largely made up of very qualified technocrats, academics, people from public and private sector, from the nonprofit NGO sector, from think tanks. So and they're not politically aspirational. So it's not a political party. So, and they work hard to make things happen, but they don't stay. That's just the nature of the situation. So we're going to have to accept, whether people like it or not, that there will be political parties that are in power, and there will be a return to the way business was done before. So hopefully we won't, because I think right now Bangladesh youth, Gen Z, has demonstrated they're watching, that they will hold their government accountable, that they're ready to fight and die for their democracy and their future. So I would hope whoever comes into power next time continues any good stuff that's started and ongoing right now, while recognizing that the Bangladesh general population has regained free speech, freedom of press. They're not going to be happy to give that up anytime soon. Right? So I think that should give us a little bit more confidence. That should give investors a little
Now
bit
that
of
you say
confidence.
this, you said it, good that you're a professor, because you are able to, crystallize what we say into such a concise, in a few sentences. Beautiful. But I want to add something here, Farhana, a little bit of history lesson, right? Because of the way you crystallized our point, everything we spoke about for the past hour. When the Indian subcontinent was, the British left, right? When they left and we became independent India, right? So where were the institutions of government? They were basically in New Delhi and in Kolkata, right? So when they left, we were left with what? With breadcrumbs. When you consider, the institutions of government, okay, and then after that we had 71. So whatever decency in government that we had, that whatever, I won't go as far as saying decency, I'm sorry about that, but whatever we did have was in West Pakistan, right? So when 71 happened, and after the Indian independence and our independence, right, what kind of government institutions did we have? What kind of people were there to run our institutions? We didn't have anything. So our starting point was like -10 instead of even a 0, right? And then the ensuing governments came, and then during Hasina's time, it went from -10 to like -100. So when I tell people we need institution building, nobody really understands what I'm talking about institutional building. That means reform is part of that. And you make your institutions in such ways that the political governments, when they come in, they cannot touch the institutions, right? They won't be able to touch BIDA. BIDA, like somebody like Ashik should be appointed for 5 years. A political government comes in, they'll be like, okay, hands off, let him be there, let him do his job, right? So like that, we need our institutions to work independently. We need the reforms so that these things are done properly, so that whatever political parties come in the future, we're still able to work as an economy, and everything else combined together. This is why I keep on saying reforms first, reforms first. Let's do institutional building, right? Without all this, nothing is going to happen. Nothing. We just go back to square one of what happened prior to August 5, and it'll be, we can all dust off our hands and go back to where we were. I mean, that's how it's going to be. That's how I feel. So we need the reforms there, no matter, who it is.
Casey, you actually make a good point here, because when we're talking about reforms, let's say someone like Ashik is in charge of BIDA. If the timelines were overlapped and not reset at every time a new election comes in, that
Right.
will actually solidify
Mhm.
efficiency and clamp down on any corruption because they
Right.
can't be replaced. A new election doesn't mean that all the heads of all the institutions have to be replaced either. So
Exactly. Like the Bangladesh Bank governor, he's doing an awesome job. People
yeah,
like that should be there for, a specific period of time. Then we can get things done.
yeah. Like in America, the Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives are not resetted every time the president is elected. It's overlapped.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. That's what
Uh,
we need.
that's excellent.
I want to inject one question. I think probably somebody from LinkedIn. So basically, his name is Engineer Abu Kaiser. He's basically essentially said that he's building some security solution to prevent threats using AI and blockchain technology. So his ask is that how BIDA can help them scale up this innovation. I mean, so maybe to find could be ideal person to answer that. Have you guys seen any sort of initiatives to attract more tech investments in Bangladesh? If somebody wants to come up with those kind of solutions.
I think there are a lot of kind of initiatives coming out from outside the country on these things, and particularly a lot of the NRBs have actually been involved. And also there are some good companies who are collaborating with few other. Like today, actually, I met one guy who is coming from Japan. They have actually
Mhm.
built some AI solutions, which is kind of being used by Toyota. So I think there are a lot of kind of success cases. But like the issue is that normally BIDA is an entity which actually can support the manufacturing unit, because like the type of licenses Ashik was telling about, these 100 licenses, these are
Mhm.
mostly mainly because of our manufacturing. Normally
Mhm.
for an IT company, like for example my company, I don't need that many kind of, because of the nature of my business, we don't need that kind of like licenses, so that we don't need to go to BIDA as such.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
of course, like entities like EPB and other, which Casey was mentioning, they can actually help us in targeting outside market. But for licensing and all other permissions, we don't need, any IT company don't need that kind of support from BID actually. So their kind of counterpart would be much more Ministry of ICT or EPB, and there are some trade bodies they can actually talk to.
Another interesting question somebody posed probably from
1 minute,
YouTube.
Manuel. Could you ask the questioner whether we were able to answer his question, and then of
Uh,
course we'll move to the next one. I mean, we can come back to it.
We don't know if
it's
the
no,
questioner is
because
there or
it's
not.
just a chat. It's not a live thing.
Okay.
So he
Okay.
made a
Okay. That's
comment. I
fine.
was just
And
going through
I know
some of the
Fahim has
comments.
to go. Fahim, do you want to say any last words before you leave?
No, I think like uh, I completely agree with most of you, particularly Casey, on the reform, the urgency of and requirement of reform. One thing I just wanted to highlight is that, of course, and what Farhana was also mentioning, that at one point of time, this government has to go. So we
Mhm.
can't actually expect this government to continue for good. So I think it is very important to build the institutions. And normally when political government comes, because there are a lot of kind of either conflict of interest and a lot of kind of divergence of interest, then they can't actually make those kind of required reforms. So this is a time, I think I would be, I frankly would not actually want the economy to grow 7-8% in next 9 months or 10 months. But I would actually, my expectation from the IG or interim government is to, so that they make some serious reforms that has a long lasting.
Exactly. Exactly.
So don't care about high growth. Just I
No.
care about significant structural reforms. That then we can be very happy. On Bapti's point, I think one of the important thing is, like of course we normally uh, blame the politicians and others for corruption. Of course they are the main culprit, of course, and it is their responsibility. But don't forget that there are a lot of corruption is basically at the bureaucracy level, and these bureaucrats don't care who the government is, whether it is Awami League government, BNP government, or even whether it's Dr. Yunus government. You will be surprised to know that the petty corruptions has not actually stopped even in this government. So these are actually continuing.
Of course.
So of course, we know that big time corruptions like bank, like Esalom type of corruption, big Simco type of corruption, these have actually stopped. But the petty corruption, everyday corruption that is any small business has to face day to day, these have not actually stopped.
Yeah,
The
it's still in its
private
streets. Yeah.
rate and all other things, they have not stopped. So this can only be stopped if we can make serious regulatory reforms in defined licensing and other things. So I just wanted to add on that point.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fahim, for joining us. I know you have to go, so we'll catch up with you later. Thank you again.
Thanks. Good luck.
So I think, Mainul, we can start to wrap up unless somebody
Yeah.
else would like to pose a question. We're not Ashik. We can try to respond
Yeah.
from our deep kind of investigation and research into all of this to prepare for this episode. But if there's one burning question, otherwise we can start to wrap up.
Yeah, I think there is not much question, more like an observation. I see a lot of responses coming. How to simplify the e-commerce licensing process, how to enhance the technological involvement, crucial for Bangladesh sustainable development and global competitiveness. It's more like an observation, not towards Ashik. But I think one uh, common theme I'm seeing from comments is that will this reform that is being done will continue to the new government? Everybody's kind of asking the same question over and over again, and they want to see this reform continue 5 years or more, if possible. That's the common theme, which is pretty positive, I guess, in that sense.
It is positive, and that is everything that I've been discussing with a lot of people about is that unless BNP and the other political parties, agree to the reform and sign some kind of agreement, then they'll be more than willing to break any reform, decisions that the IT takes independently, right? So it must be done together in consensus, and everybody has to sign it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
this is never going to work.
Correct. And this is something that's become very contentious, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people, almost everyone, wants to see structural reforms that are beneficial to the country across
Right.
sectors, right? Judiciary, legislative, in terms of the kinds of way we do business, all these institutional changes. But whoever comes into power can easily remove them. So I think
This
that
is the biggest.
accountability is
This is my biggest worry. It's my
yeah,
biggest
this is everyone's biggest
worry.
worry, that if you
You
work
see,
so hard.
I will just, as a parting thought, I mean, we'll probably leave now. I'm also working, uh, basically, I'm working with a leasing company that was liquidated. And me and some depositors, we got together and brought it back to life. And now we are going after people who have defaulted more close to 700 crore taka, right? And just looking at the files and seeing how the Bangladesh bank governors and officers at that time, how super corrupted they were, how institutions were destroyed. It just I can't speak about it because I have restrictions on that, but I can just tell you in summary that it just sometimes I get so frustrated at what things have happened. And many people, like sometimes they will tell people, look, I'm happy with the way things are. But if you make these reforms, we need to make sure we cannot go back to this, whatever has happened in the past 15 years. We cannot go back.
Correct.
Otherwise, why all this? Why July and August? Then what was it all for, right? What was it all
Correct.
for?
So I
So
think
that's
this
my
is
biggest worry.
something in a future episode we will discuss
Yeah.
reforms more. We will have a guest who
Mhm.
is an expert on reforms. But I think one of the issues that we'd like to end on is that we did talk about investment summit. We did talk about growing the Bangladesh economy. We talked about
Mhm.
process and structure, connectivity and sectors.
Mhm.
But the point is, we're landing on reforms because if we do not maintain any positive changes into the future, then all of those children died for nothing.
Oh yeah.
Last July, 1,500 students died for nothing. 20, 30,000 people were injured, maimed for nothing, right? So we know that there are people who do not want to see any success. They want their deaths to be for nothing. So I think it's important that everybody who wants to see a more positive outcome and to honor our July martyrs, that we support positive reforms, that we ensure that there's commitment to seeing less corruption, less red tape, to having more accountability, more transparency. And I strongly believe that our population is much more aware now, and our Gen Z are much more engaged, that they will remain activated, and they will hold whoever the future government is to be accountable. And if we want to continue to have investment and growth, employment generation in the country, better education, better healthcare, better digital connectivity, we need to see these kinds of structural reforms stay. So I will wrap up this session.
Can I
today.
just like add one last thing? So
Unless you're going to say it in a minute, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm not. You can go into detail later, but wouldn't it be ideal? Everything that you said, the number one thing is security, and the biggest culprits, I think, is Sheikh Hasina, but the police were the biggest culprits. If something was given to them where they can actually be paid properly, have proper housing, maybe that will prevent police corruption. And this could be like further talked about later in the future talks. But I mean, that's just an idea I just want to throw out.
This is what I raised a little while ago, that if we do not elevate public sector, basically their livelihood, their income,
Yep.
right, which is obviously then housing and other issues. But if you do not give people the opportunity to have, comfortable a life at a basic minimum, then corruption breeds. And if they see corruption at the top, the people with $1 billion and Porsches and Ferraris in Bangladesh continually stealing from everybody, then that kind of trickles down. That's the trickle down economics that does trickle down when the leaders set the bad example. So it's not just police; it's across different sectors. So I will now wrap it up, and thank you, the audience who joined us today. Thank you, team, especially Mainu and Munaf and others and Casey. And please do, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please do follow the Bangladesh America Alliance across social media handles at BD US Alliance. Thank you again, and look out for a future episode of Bangladesh and the World. Thank you all.